Good morning. Today we're going to be looking at a really beautiful characteristic of Jesus that should free us to desire to be more like him and to be more truly ourselves. In Matthew we read of how the disciples of John the Baptist come to Jesus and tell him that his cousin is dead. And Jesus does something that's really unusual that we need to note. Matthew chapter 14 verses 13 to 14 we read, "When Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place by himself." Well, it seems that the disciples must have told the crowd where Jesus was going, because this is what we hear next. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. So when he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them, and he healed their sick. So one of the evident characteristics of Jesus that you and I need to cultivate in our lives is that you and I should display the simple value of being real. No masks. Throughout his life on earth, Jesus does not fail to reveal his true identity. He never wears a mask. His approach to people is consistent. This, of course, means he knew who he was and he was secure in his identity. He wept, he laughed, and he got angry. He was fully in touch with his emotions. In all of the occasions we read about Jesus, including this one, he never denies his mission or purpose, and he chooses in this case to step aside from his hurt and minister to the crowd to fulfill his mission and purpose. How do we know that he was hurting? Well, he was fully human, and we know what it's like to lose a loved one. And Jesus has had no time to process his hurt. He's only just heard that John, his cousin, is dead. And so he looks at the crowd and he chooses to step aside from his hurt and to minister healing to the people. What this reminds us of is that hurting is not weakness, it is simply human, and that it's not necessary to hide it or deny it while ministering to people. How do we become so real that we can be like that? Well, Bill Johnson says in his book, Face to Face with God, the impulse of the believer is not the need to perform for God, but to commune with him, because only when we perceive the one in whose image we were made do we become more who we are and the one for whom we were made. You see, our sole passion, our central focus must be to make time to gaze on the one who is beauty and majesty beyond description. Remember all that we have learned so far. We need to spend time in the Word studying Jesus. We need to spend time in his presence worshiping and praying. And we need to intentionally practice his presence. Now, I used to wear masks, and I probably still have some. There were some masks I never even discussed with God, but God knew all about them, and he began to reveal them and then strip them away from me. And as he's been doing that, guess what? I found that his abundant life began to rise up within me, and I became more and more truly myself. The good news is that God has placed in us and established the root in us and given us the desire and the inclination to be more like Jesus, to be more and more real, and to choose to pursue it. So tomorrow we're going to be looking at another aspect of how we pursue Christ to become more and more like him. So until then, have a Christ-filled and blessed day. Bye-bye.